So yeah, just want to welcome Sue Campbell and Grace. Grace, I don't know your last name.
Sorry, my last name is Hansen.
Hansen, Grace Hansen, from OUTMaine. Sue, in particular, has been a presenter at the Island Teachers Conference since I started at the Island Institute. I think this might be our 6th conference, whether it's lightning talks or presentation or just contributing materials. So it's just great to have you back, and particularly for this year's conference with our focus on equity. It's just really important to have you at the table and to just learn about what's going on and get some new tools, as your title says. So so thank you so much for being part of it. Thanks to all of you for being in this session, and I'll let you get to it.
Great, thanks Yvonne. Grace, if you want to go ahead and share your screen. Grace is going to be our tech person today.
I'll do my best.
So while Grace is getting that shared, I would love to just take a minute to, we'll introduce ourselves in just a second, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background about who we are, in case we are a new name to you and you haven't participated in any of our trainings or other programming. We are OUTMaine, based here in Rockland, but supporting LGBTQ youth across all of rural Maine. And we do it through a 4-tiered approach. Our first tier, of course, is direct work with youth. And we traditionally have done lots of in-person programming, everything from regional overnights and weekly youth groups to leadership retreats and our large Rainbow Ball weekend, where we have about 200 youth that come together from across the state, along with their adult advisors, for some community and lots of learning and team building activities and fun over a weekend, culminated with a large formal ball. And with the recent onset of the pandemic, we've moved all of our youth programming online. So we're now running multiple days a week of youth programming. And we've seen over 200 youth from across the state engaging and participating in that youth programming. So the beautiful part about the virtual programming is that it doesn't matter where you are. So for those of you that are out in island schools or other rural coastal schools, this could be a great opportunity for your youth to be able to engage in some of the youth programming. And we have everything from our weekly youth group to we have a emerging leaders group for a little bit older youth that are 18 to 22. We also are running several role-playing games. They seem to really enjoy those. And the older youth take leadership roles in running some of those campaigns. And we will be having additional programming coming as our new youth engagement coordinator comes online next week. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 is our work in schools. We do a lot of consulting with schools. We do training in schools. We really have a full integrated school climate initiative. So we can do everything from school board policy work to education and training for both teachers and staff, as well as helping schools establish and continue to support gay, straight, trans alliances. We then do a lot of direct support with parents and families to help reduce homelessness. 40% of Maine's homeless youth identify as LGBT, and about 40% of youth in foster care are identifying as LGBT. So it's very important for us to continue to do work with parents and families. We are going to be launching our online virtual parent group, bringing that back. It had been on hiatus during COVID this coming month. So we may, if you know any parents that are in any of your communities that would like to participate, please send them over to our website, sign up so that they can get the Zoom link to connect to that group. And then our 4th tier is about weaving safety nets within the communities, because you as adults are all there working with your youth on a day-to-day basis, and you really are the safety net. And so our goal is to give you as many tools as possible. So we provide lots of trainings, we provide resources and tools, many of which we're going to talk about some of those today. And then we do a lot of consultation as well. So whatever we can do to help you support your youth in your communities, that's what we're here to do. Go ahead, Grace, to the next slide. So I'm Sue Campbell, Deputy Director at OUTMaine. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And with me we have, Grace, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Hansen. I'm the new youth health educator working mainly in tobacco and vaping prevention among LGBTQ plus youth. And my pronouns are also she, her, and hers.
And I would love to take just a couple of minutes and do a quick round of introductions because I'd love to know all of why you're, who you are, where you come from, maybe, if you'd like to share your pronouns and, what challenge might you be facing or what's your interest in working with LGBT youth? We start with Emmeline at the top.
Okay, my name's Emmeline. I am from Long Island, Maine, but right now I'm at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm sorry, I'm kind of blanking on what we're supposed to.
That's okay. I was just curious what brought you to this session today.
And yeah, I'm just interested in the work because I don't see, like, outwardly, at least on the island, many like LGBTQ plus folk, and just wondering about how we can make a more inclusive environment in that way.
Okay, great. Let's see, I'm seeing the folks from the Island Institute. How about Gabe?
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, Gabe McPhail. I actually work for the town of Vinyl Haven, and then I also do various community development consulting work on the island. And so my general interest really is just a more equitable island and looking at resources available to the community and how we might be able to integrate some of what you have to offer.
Okay, great. Bev?
Hi, I'm work for Island Readers and Writers in Southwest Harbor. So working from home now. We work with school children, pre-K to 8, and I'm always wanting to keep an open mind as to how to help kids learn more about LGBTQ plus community, not to be scared about it. You just want to know more.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here. Anne?
Yes, hi, I'm Anne. I'm the Island Institute Fellow on Islesboro for the next 2 years, and a lot of my work is with the Islesboro Central School, as well as some other community organizations. And yeah, I'm originally from Hollowell, Maine, and just kind of really just curious about how best to support LGBTQ people, both just in my personal life and in my work life as I start at Islesboro Central School.
Okay, great. Molly?
Hello, I'm Molly, and I work for the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. I work with our rural teachers in the regional teacher communities around the state. I use she, her pronouns, and I attended this session today because a lot of what our teachers are talking about this school year in particular are supporting their students' social and emotional well-being, and I think this is a big part of that, and just trying to find as many resources and connections for our teachers so that they feel supported in offering what they can to their students.
Okay, great. Thank you. Lisa?
Hi, Sue. I'm Lisa Moselvitz. I'm the director of Archipelago at the Island Institute. I use she, her pronouns. And I am here because I'm part of the Inclusion and Equity Task Force at the Institute, and I'm learning more and educating myself. So this is a part of what I wanted to do, is to be here today. So thank you, Sue.
Great, thank you. Ian?
Hey, thanks. I am a director of education for a small puppet theater company. I work all over the state and throughout New England, and don't work with any one group of students, which means that I encounter all, students of all kinds, through my work. So I'm looking forward to this and other sessions, just to stay abreast of resources that are available and make sure that I'm holding myself to, best practice standards.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here. Judith.
Hi, my name is Judith Mons, and I stay on Vinyl Haven in the summer. I'm formerly a high school art teacher and more presently have been involved with teacher training in New York State. And I'm just really interested in seeing the programming that's happening in Maine in terms of supporting students.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here. Caitlin.
Hi, my name is Caitlin, she, her, hers. I work at Monhegan Island School as the teacher there. And I think in such a small community like Monhegan, it's really important to know the best practices and ways to help students and community members, as well as people in my own life who are part of the LGBTQ community. So thank you for having us.
All right, well, thanks much. All right, I think I picked up everyone except Yvonne and Christina. Did I miss anyone else? All right, great. Well, thank you all for being here. Today we're going to, Grace, you can go to the next slide. Today we're going to talk about some tools that are topics and tools that can easily be integrated into curriculum. We're going to sample some sample activities. We're going to take a look at a few, and then we've got a game we're going to play. And just really understanding the importance of creating an inclusive classroom. So there is so much more that we could talk about and so much more that we could provide for information. So if there are topics and pieces of information that you are still looking for after today, please reach out to us, and we can talk about doing trainings in your school. We can talk about other training opportunities that we have to help expand your knowledge base, or other staff that you have as well. So go ahead to the next slide, Grace. So these are some examples of some inclusive topics. So what I've done today is I've pulled together some examples of some topics with some links to resources that we have out on in our resource library. So we're going to take a look at a few of these. So the first one is an inclusive language. This article gives us the opportunity to take a look at 8 steps to inclusive language in the classroom. So being really important to think about the diverse family formation and how does that work, helping students understand that different families are made up differently, and not to assume that any one family is going to be the same as another family. Using language that reflects what people call themselves. We get very hooked on words and terminology and labels. And the key to remember is that even though you may not know what all of the terms are or what someone else's pronouns may be, it's okay to ask, and whatever those identities are is what those people are going to be most comfortable with. So very important to be thinking about what is someone's name, what are the pronouns they use, what terminology or labels do they use for themselves, and then reflect that language back with them. We all want to be respected and identified in the way that we identify ourselves. Really using person-centered language as a general rule, and making sure that you are thinking about the language that you use. So instead of using, using words like people with disabilities instead of, the disabled, or using transgender people instead of words like transgenders or the transgendered. Those would not be the appropriate way of using those. Understand and respect differences between sexual orientation and gender identity, that these are 2 very separate things, and that someone's sexual orientation may or may not have anything to do with their gender identity. So recognizing that those are different and separate, being really intentional about representing diversity in your stories and in curricula, and recognizing that diversity comes in many ways. I mean, we all have a lot of cross-sectional identities. So we all have gender identities. We all have gender expressions. We all have sexual orientations. We also have race and ethnicities and religions and all sorts of things that we identify with. So really being intentional and thinking about what those are and how do we introduce those different pieces of each individual person to our youth as we are having conversations with them. And then, you know, really thinking about using gender neutral language and encompassing all genders. So, you know, getting away from the binary of male and female, man and woman. So thinking about people of all genders, children instead of boys and girls, siblings instead of brothers and sisters, and those types of things. Using language that does not assume that all people are heterosexual, super important. And avoid negative and demeaning language for people with disabilities. So thinking about people living with HIV or AIDS rather than AIDS victims, you know, try to stay away from victim terminology, thinking about people who use wheelchairs rather than wheelchair bound. And so there's some additional links here with some additional resources for you, but this is one of the tools that are out there. If you want to go back to the slide. So then terminology and vocabulary, I started to talk about that a bit. We've given you a link to our terminology list, which is multiple pages, and it's there as a resource tool for you. It isn't there for you to necessarily need to memorize all of the terms and their definitions, and also recognize that just when you think you've heard all of the terms, you're going to have a young person come up and give you a new term that you don't know what that word means, or having a word that they use that your understanding of it may be different than theirs. And so when that happens, it's okay to say, oh, that's a new word for me. How do you use that word? So that you get the understanding that they have of that language. And so how are they using that language? How do they identify with that? And when you're working with youth, if you want to work with them around how to get them to understand some of the terminology and begin some conversations, we've got a couple of different ways activities that we've used. One of them is where we break youth up into groups of, say, 4 to 5 youth, and we put them in breakout rooms in Zoom, and we give them a few words. So we could give them, you know, a word apiece, whatever it might be, and then ask them to work together to write a short story using those words in 3 to 5 sentences, and then work with them to, you know, kind of move between the different rooms to kind of work with them around the use of the terminology and the words, and see what kind of a story they can come up with. It's really, they can be quite creative. They can be quite creative. Jeopardy is another great way of using terminology and teaching terminology. We're actually going to take a look at a Jeopardy game that we've put together in a little bit. And thinking about LGBT history, October is LGBT History Month. So we've got a couple of examples here that are from our website. Go ahead and click on that first one there, the history of the rainbow flag. And so you'll see what we've done here is we've pulled together a couple of videos. These are usually very short. You can see 1 to 2 minute videos that you can share with your youth, and then have some sort of a discussion about what they learned in that video. So here's a couple of starter questions that we have in this particular one that says, what other current LGBT symbols do you know of? Have you seen Philadelphia's version of the pride flag? And, you know, and whatever else might have come up out of these little videos. And so many of our resources have these short videos in them, and then they will have some kind of follow-up activity or follow-up questions. And then there's the 1969 Stonewall Uprising. Many youth don't know anything about Stonewall. So these are a couple of short videos. One is 2 minutes, the other is 6. And then giving them an opportunity to talk about Stonewall and what they learned in those videos, and how did these events contribute to the fight for LGBT rights. And then you could even compare it to what's happening today. What's happening today with LGBT rights, and how does that compare to what was happening back in 1969, which for these youth will seem like, you know, a very long time ago, right? And then we can, this next one is a kind of a fun game to play. It's LGBT people in history and role models. And it's actually an icebreaker game that we've put together where you can write down the various names. You can assign a name to each person, and then they get to figure out, learn a little bit about each of these people. And these are all LGBT people that are role models in our society. So many of them are entertainment figures. There are some musicians, some writers and intellectuals. And so it's really interesting for them to learn about the different LGBT people. Here are some politicians, some athletes, and really have those conversations. It's amazing how many of us learned about history, learned about some of these people and had no idea that they also had an LGBT identity. So really important for people to realize and for youth to learn that there are adult role models out there for them, and role models that are doing very, very well. And so that life can be very good. Next slide, Grace. And here are a few more. Here's gender roles. I really love the gender roles conversation. This can go in so many ways. So here's a couple of short videos that are very binary. You know, like a girl, man up. They're very, very binary. But you really can have great conversations. These are a couple of questions that are in here. Another really good question to work with youth is, how does how does gender impact their lives? And have them think about all of the different ways that things are gendered in their lives. And it's amazing. I mean, it's from everything we do in our life, from walking into a store to buy clothing, to going to the pharmaceutical section to buy shampoo or deodorant. We did this activity with a group of high schoolers, and it was amazing what they came up with. And I think the one that jumped out at me was the young man who was like, you know, I work part-time after school, and so does my girlfriend, but I always have to pay for the dates. Why do I have to always pay for the date? Why is it the guy's responsibility to do that? And so we had these conversations, and so it was a really interesting and very eye-opening. You get them started and they will come up with a whole host of ways, and then start helping them challenge why are things that way, and what if somebody doesn't fit into the role of male or female, and how might that impact their lives? And the minute we divide things into a boys group and a girls group, we've immediately eliminated an entire population of people. And so how do we help bring that together? So sometimes starting at the ends and bringing them back into the middle and having them work through that and figure that out, this can be a really strong conversation. And this can even be talked about at the younger levels by changing the terms and thinking about boys and girls, and, you know, what kinds of games and toys do boys want to play versus girls, and thinking about what those conversations are and helping them, you know, navigate some of that, and thinking about how to break through some of those gender roles. So that's a great activity. We also have a lot on inclusive health education, and this link is an introduction to health education, but we also have a lot of health education curriculum that is out there. So some topics that, you know, these are some topics that local youth wished their health curriculum would discuss. And, you know, these are things like the differences between sex and gender, and how sex is biological, but gender is a social construct, and that whatever sex you were assigned at birth doesn't automatically mean that that's the gender that you're going to identify with, and being able to have those conversations. The differences between sexual orientation and gender identity, and what does that really mean? The differences between sexual attraction and romantic attraction. Really having, you know, STI, consent, pregnancy in terms that all sexual orientation and gender identities can relate to. So there's a whole variety of these here that are really important. Maine Family Planning has got some really great, they've just come out with a best practices guide around the STD, consent, and pregnancy piece that I really like what they've done with it. And so this has got, you know, here's an introduction to some inclusive health education. On our website, which we're going to take a look at in a minute, we have a whole variety of additional health education resources. So if that's an area that you're looking for information, we've got lots of options out there. So what's next, Grace? And then pronoun usage and why it's important. Pronouns are extremely important. Go ahead and go to that one, Grace. So this is a great tool to help youth and adults think about how do they use terminology and pronouns. This has the various pronouns. There's a couple of videos here as well. And getting people used to and comfortable using their pronouns. One of the easiest things that you can do is offer your own out. So when you introduce yourself, offer that out. I noticed many of you put your pronouns in your on your name today on Zoom, and that's fantastic. That helps people immediately know what is your pronoun, and it also lets people know that you're aware and that you're open to it and thinking about what different identities people have, and that's really important. If you have an email signature, put your pronouns in your email signature. You know, these are all ways that we can easily introduce who we are to other people and make it easier for them to want to come back and offer what their pronouns are and recognize that we might be safe people to talk to. So for additional activities, we're going to go out to our resource library. I don't know how many of you have explored our library. If you go on our website at the top of the menu, we have it's under resources and then resource library. And what we've done with this is we've broken it down into various categories. So you can search by topic or resource name. So if you click on where it says topic, Grace, or resource, either one of those you'll see, you can search down through those. You can also put something in a search and type into that. If you're looking for a particular resource that's tailored to you, so providers, families, schools, you can narrow the information down by that. If you go to schools, you can see you can narrow it down to GSTA, school counselors, school libraries, whatever the area of expertise is that you're looking for. And then we've also narrowed it down by curriculum, by grade level. And so many of the resources that are out on our resource library are not necessarily ours. They are ones that we've gathered together that we feel are really exceptionally good resources, and we wanted to make them easily available. In addition to that, we also have OUTMaine specific resources. So if you come out there and you click on that, that will filter that to the OUTMaine resources. So you can see here, this has a variety of resources, and all of these activities have different additional questions or follow-up activities. So we've pulled different pieces of information together. So we have some of these are on identity, some of these are about terminology, marriage equality, a whole variety of different things. And we're continually adding to this. So this is something that we've started working on recently, and we're now building out so that there will be more resources as time expands. And so anytime you're looking for a resource of some sort, if you can't find it, don't drive yourself crazy trying to locate it. Sometimes I have that problem. Just email us and we will dig it out and find it and send it off to you. Or if we don't have it readily available, we will see what we can do to either pull that information together or find it and then add it to our resource library, because if you're looking for it, someone else is probably looking for it as well. So we really make this better by the more questions people ask. So we're going to, if you go to the next slide, we're going to take the next a little bit of time here. And whoops, go back. We're going to play a little Jeopardy. So turn on your mics. Go ahead, Grace, and click on that. This is we're doing this because this is an example of another tool. We have this set up. We can set this up with additional words and categories, and then we will share all of these links out. So this is one we set up for this purpose, but you could easily use this with a group of students or a class it has different categories. So we've got the category sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, acronyms, and important terms. So what we're going to do is we'll play. If someone wants to call out a category and an amount, Grace will click on that, and then we're going to keep this simple today and just go ahead and holler out your answers. And then we're going to trust you to keep track of your own score. And at the end, we'll see who has high score. And with Yvonne's help, we're going to send you a swag bag.
All right.
All right. So who wants to pick a category first?
Gender identity for 30.
Gender identity for 30. A person whose gender identity does not fit within the gender binary, whether because they do not identify with either binary gender or because they identify with both. Got an answer? What?
Non-binary.
Non-binary. What is non-binary? Emmeline, you get to pick the next one and write down 30 points for yourself.
Important terms for 20.
The unauthorized disclosure by one person of another gender identity or sexual orientation.
What is outing?
Outing, yeah.
What is outing? I think Ian got that one first. What is outing? Ian, write down 20 and pick the next category.
All right, let's do it. Gender expression for 20.
Gender expression for 20. A person who identifies as masculine, whether in their gender expression and aesthetic, or in their gender role or as a gender identity.
What is male?
What is butch? We want to pick again?
Sure. Sexual orientation for 20.
A person who experiences romantic, emotional, or sexual attraction to people of two or more genders.
What is
Bisexual.
Oh, who got that one first?
Take it, Emily.
Caitlin.
We think it was Caitlin. All right, Caitlin. What is bisexual? Pick your next category, Caitlin.
Acronyms for 40.
Acronyms for 40. MTF.
What is
Male
transgender
to,
female?
what is male to female?
Okay, I think Ian got that one first. What is male to female? So Ian, next score.
Acronyms 30.
What is female to male?
All right, Caitlin, good job.
I wanted that one.
Pick your next category.
Gender identity for 20.
A person whose gender identity is changeable or not fixed.
What is gender fluid?
Yes, Krista. Pick your category.
Oh, how many points was that too? I should write it down.
I think that was 20, wasn't it?
Oh, got catching up. How about important terms for 30?
A person who is unsure of or in the process of figuring out their sexual orientation and or gender identity. Who said that? Yes. Who is questioning? Ian. Pick your next category.
Important terms 40.
The act of referring to someone as a gender to which they do not identify.
What is
This can.
misgendering?
Oh, what is misgendering? Good job.
Gender identity 40.
Gender identity 40. A person whose gender identity or expression is aligned with their sex assigned at birth.
What is cisgender?
Yes, that was Caitlin, I believe. All right, Caitlin, next category.
Gender expression for 40.
A person whose gender identity, gender expression, or behaviors do not conform to the traditional societal gender expectations.
What is gender nonconforming?
What is Gender nonconforming. Good job.
Sounds like a
Krista.
trick question.
Next category.
The answer is in the question. Sexual orientation 30.
A person who experiences emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to people regardless of their gender.
What is pansexual?
What is pansexual? Good job, Judith. Next category.
Gender expression for 30.
An umbrella term for anyone whose sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, or gender expression are outside societal norms.
What is queer?
What is queer? Good job. Who grabbed that one? Was that Caitlin?
I'm
Or
not sure who
Judith?
did it first.
Was it? I don't know. We'll split it. You can both take it. Which one of you wants to grab the next one?
You go, Judith.
Acronyms for 20.
Acronyms for 20. AFAB. What is assigned female at birth? All right. Go ahead, Judith.
Again.
Acronyms for 10.
LGBTQ plus.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, queer.
Yeah, so it's lesbian, gay. Go ahead and put that one up. Yeah, we'll give it to you. It's lesbian, gay,
okay.
bisexual, transgender, and then queer or questioning.
Okay.
Plus. So go ahead and pick your next one.
Okay. Important terms for 10.
The process of disclosing one's sexual orientation or gender identity to others. This is not a discrete event, but a lifelong process.
What is coming out?
What is coming out? What would you like next, Caitlin?
Let's go for a hard one. Important terms 50.
Important terms 50. The use of birth or other former name of a transgender or non-binary person without consent. It is not always intentional.
What is dead naming?
What is dead naming?
Wow.
So go ahead and pick your next category.
Sexual orientation for 40.
A person who only experiences sexual attraction after having developed a strong emotional connection with someone. What is demisexual?
Demisexual.
Okay, do you want to pick another category?
Gender expression for 50.
An individual's physical characteristics, behaviors, and presentation that intentionally or unintentionally serve as social markers of masculinity, femininity, or androgyny.
What is presentation? No, that's in the, never mind.
What is gender expression?
Another trick question.
Another trick question. Which category would you like again? Go ahead and pick another one.
Gender identity for 10.
An adjective describing a person whose gender identity is not aligned with their sex assigned at birth or whose gender expression is non-conforming. What is transgender? How about if you try it again?
Sexual orientation for 10.
A person who experiences romantic, emotional, or sexual attraction to people of the opposite gender as themselves.
What is heterosexual?
Yes, I think Ian got that one first. What is heterosexual? Go ahead, Ian.
Sexual orientation for 50.
Sexual orientation for 50. A person who does not experience sexual attraction. Ian,
What is
asexual. Yes, Ian, get that one first. Okay, Ian.
Gender identity for 50.
A person who does not identify with any gender or who identifies as genderless.
What is androgynous?
What is agender? I think Ian, you picked last. So go ahead and pick again.
Okay, let's go acronyms for 50.
AMAB.
Assigned male at birth.
Yes, Molly. Good job, 50 points.
Tell me.
So the last one is gender expression for 10.
We also have a final question.
Yes, we do. A person who identifies as feminine, whether in their gender expression, aesthetic, in their gender role, or as a gender identity.
Yeah.
Say that again.
What is femme?
Yes, what is femme? So the final question, and then you can come down, and then depending on how you want to play this with the kids, you can make them add up, look at their scores and have them give out, say how many points they want to give. But for today, we'll make the final question worth 100 points. So the final question is: a person who actively works to eliminate the oppression and marginalization of people within an identity group of which they do not self-identify. This includes educating oneself and others, providing support to individuals, and challenging oppressive remarks, behaviors, policies, and institutional structures.
Is an ally.
Ooh, who said that first? I heard Molly say it, but I think I heard somebody else say it.
I think I said it
Final
too.
Jeopardy. Everyone who gets it right gets the points, right?
Excellent. We'll give everyone who said it right the points. I like it. So add up your points.
Do we have more slideshow in a minute, Sue, or was that?
We have one more slide.
I'll bring us back, but I
We
thought.
will. I just would love to know what people got for scores. Who wants to tell me what their scores are?
Who thinks they won?
Good question. All right. Who got at least 50 points? Raise your hand. Okay. Who got 75 points? Raise your hand. Who got 100 points? All right, raise your hand. Who got 120 points? 150 points? 175 points? 200 points? Oh, Caitlin wins! Oh, Caitlin, we need you need to email us your mailing address and we will send you a swag bag.
I'm so excited. Love swag.
And if you're gonna share the swag with any of your students, tell us how many you got. So we'll make sure you have enough for all your kids.
4, so it's kind of
4, excellent. Boy, I bet there are other teachers who would beg to have only 4 students. All right.
4 grades also. So
4 grades also. Well, you can't have it all easy, right?
Right.
12-year spread or something.
That's right. That's right. Always, kindergartner or 12th grader, right? So communicating acceptance is really important. Words have meaning. It's okay to ask about their identity and their pronouns. Follow their lead, even if and when it changes. This is really key. We have youth who we will see in programming, and one time we see them, they are using one name. They might be using one set of pronouns. The next time we see them, it might be something different. They're adolescents. They're exploring. They're growing up. They're figuring out who they are. And in many places in their life, it's not safe for them to have that freedom to be able to be who they are and figure that out. And if you are their safe person, it will be key. Think about how words are being used in your workspace, forms, materials. If you need literature, posters, and those types of things, we have that kind of stuff available. And most importantly, be genuine. If you don't understand something, it's okay to ask a question. And then we have one more resource here that I really liked, which was about 7 forms of curriculum bias. And to really be thinking about this, the first one being invisibility. Underrepresentation of certain groups can imply that these groups are of less value, importance, or significance. When our youth don't see themselves in what they're learning, they believe that they don't matter or that there's something wrong with them. Stereotyping, aligning only traditional and rigid roles or attributes to a group, thus eliminating the ability and potential of that group, denying students the knowledge of the diversity or the complexity and variations among those groups and individuals. Imbalance or selectivity, presenting only one interpretation of an issue, situation, or a group, really give them that space to explore. Unreality, presenting an unrealistic portrayal of a country's history. We were just reading, one of the things that our staff is doing is we're really spending some time looking at racial diversity right now. And the other day we read an article about why Maine is so white. And it was really fascinating to read that and realize like how diverse Maine used to be and why it's not that way anymore. And that's not, I kind of like, I have always, I'm a Mainer. I grew up here, like many generations. And, I had no idea like how diverse the state of Maine had been at one time, and it no longer is. So thinking about, what is our history and exploring that and looking at those histories. Fragmentation and isolation, separating issues relating to people who are LGBTQ, people of color, women, from the main body of text, and linguistic bias, cosmetic bias. All of these are ways that we are being biased in our curriculum without always even recognizing it. And so we want to really take a look at the curriculum that we're using with that lens of what is the message that this is sending. And often it's not intentional, but it's just the way that our society has gone, the direction that we've gone. And sometimes things have gone that way because of a very intentional message or something that's going on in our country, but it then becomes what people think of as the norm. And so it excludes a whole group of people. So we really want to be thinking about that. I didn't spend time today putting in a lot of statistics, but I will share with Yvonne some information and resources that she will share with you. But know that in 2019, when Maine Youth filled out the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, the number of youth that are now identifying, and these were high schoolers, but you can use that percentage across the population, it is now 1 in 5, or 20% of Maine's high school students are now identifying as LGBT or questioning their gender identity or sexual orientation. It is no longer a small group of youth. So when you look at the youth that you work with, if you look at them and say, okay, it's possible that 20% of them identify in some way, but they may not feel like it's safe to come out. They may not have the language to have it come out. And 41% of them are thinking about suicide. So, recognize that one adult is all it takes to make a difference in a child's life, and that adult could be you. So if you have other questions, or you have you're looking for other resources or whatnot, our contact information is here. We're going to share this PowerPoint with you. We'll give it to Yvonne and she can share it out so that you have access to those links. We're here for whatever it is that you need. I'm happy to take any additional questions now, or I'm a little ahead of time.
Yeah, nicely done.
Thanks. So any other questions today? Otherwise, I think you're going to have a little bit of free time.
Krista?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sue and Grace. I do have one question related to that last statistic of 1 in 5 youth identifying as LGBTQ plus. What the response is to people in our society who might say, see, like, these, you're confusing them, they're questioning, like, who see it as an emerging issue, like, yeah, what's the history, what's the rest of the real story, just to kind of respond to those who might think that this is a phenomenon that was created.
It's a really good question. And the reality is LGBT people have always been there. It just hasn't been safe for them to come out. They haven't had the language. You know, I can use my son as an example. He identifies as trans, and he finally identified when he was about 16. And when the more we talked about it, he said, you know, I always knew there was something different about me, but I didn't have the language to know what it was. And I think that that's true for many, many youth. They don't have the language. And when you look at many adults that are in our society that identify, they have always identified, but it may not have been safe for them in the communities that they lived with. I mean, we have educators who have been, you know, a generation of educators who were never allowed to be out as strong role models in their schools because it wasn't safe. They could have lost their jobs. So this is not something new. It's just that we are now living in a society where there's so much more information coming in all different directions all of the time. Our children are able to learn so much more and get so much more information and language now than they ever could have. I mean, when I was a child, I mean, the internet wasn't a thing. I hate to say that, but that's actually true. God, that makes me old. But, you know, I mean, I only learned what I was taught by my parents or my teachers. I didn't have other resources available to me. Our youth today have those resources. There is nobody out there turning our kids gay. It is just not a thing. But yes, there are people out there who believe that. You know, and then there are people out there who will say, well, we want to be welcoming and affirming. And then when you try or they try, they panic. So we have to try to meet everybody where they are and try to help them. You know, what are they really afraid of? You know, what are they afraid of? I mean, you know, they get to live in a world where they're automatically accepted and they don't have to defend who they are. And LGBT people are having to defend themselves and always think about, are they safe in a situation? So what are other people afraid of? You know, LGBT people just want to live their lives like everybody else. You know, we all just want to be like, you know, be able to live our lives, earn an income, do our groceries, right? Just like everybody else. So that's what I would say, Christina. Yes, Bev.
Sorry, this is completely random, but
it's okay.
I'm loving the office behind you. It is so neat and clean and...
Thanks. It's a virtual office.
Oh.
Because my office doesn't look that nice, but I wish.
Oh, okay, nice.
So
okay. Thank you for everything you do, though. This has been wonderful talk. Thank you.
Well, good. I'm so glad it's worked for you. Any other questions for you?
Sue, this is Gabe.
Hi, Gabe.
Just wondering, and maybe this is hard to do in just a couple minutes, but if there's an example of a school, I don't know if it would be like a school administration, or I'm just curious of like who from schools, you know, is reaching out to you, and how sort of all encompassing is your work in that school? I'm just wondering if it's like pockets within a school, or there's whole like schools that are absorbing.
Well, we're working all across the state, and with our trainings, we've trained over 8,000 people since 2015. So we've worked in a lot of schools doing a lot of training. In the past couple of years, we've been doing like some across the sector work. So we've done some work with like RSU 13, where we've looked at their policies, made recommendations, and then we've been doing some training with them. Things got cut a little short last year because of COVID. So we're kind of hoping that as things get better this year, we can get back in with them. We've been doing some work up in the Oxford County area with a couple of districts up there, trying to do a full school climate approach with those. So we've had several. We've been doing some up in the Penobscot area as well with that whole school climate approach. I mean, but as far as like training and education, I mean, we've done hundreds of schools across the state, but the policy work and stuff is a little bit, has been a little bit slower to get started. School boards are always, you know, school boards are people who are interested in doing something, but they don't necessarily have an educational background. And so sometimes it takes education for them to get to the place where they're beginning to recognize they really need to put these policies into place and then allow their administration to enforce them. Because we have districts who have policies but then don't enforce them.
I think it's also important to note that pocket work within schools can also it has the capacity to affect the whole school climate. We do a lot of work with GSTAs and helping schools start GSTAs, and there's been a lot of interesting research coming out in the last few years about what a large overall effect even just having a GSTA in the school has on bullying rates for all students, not just LGBTQ students within the school climate.
Yeah, there's a study that came out of British Columbia a few years ago that showed that any school that has a gay, straight, trans alliance, regardless of how active, can help reduce bullying and harassment by over 50% for all students. And so we're working with the Maine CDC now to see if we can duplicate that study here in Maine, but you know, the wheels of progress crank slowly.
I would just add to the bit about pockets, having been the school counselor in Vinyl Haven for many years, and there were times when it was just triage. It was like a kid was in crisis and we needed help, and you know, something around LGBTQ plus identity was going on, and OUTMaine was always just like drop everything and help connect people. You know, I can remember one situation in particular where it was all like happening, instant messaging, all of us, and just really helping like kind of provide a net around a student who was really in trouble, and just kind of hold them. Because so often it is just a holding until they're, you know, they're not great, but they're out of the woods as far as being really, you know, in harm's way from themselves or from others. And so that was great for me to be able to just reach out and be able to know what was going on and have that student especially feel like there was some coordination of their adults that were working together. And I know for one student in particular who's an adult now, but that was really, I mean, they really feel that made a huge difference, life-saving, really. So I think the pocket work and just the safety, the harm reduction or prevention is also really, really important. Ideally, it never gets to that point and you have all these systems in place, but when you don't, OUTMaine is still right there to help, which is really great for school counselors and other people dealing with those intense emotions.
Thanks, Yvonne. Yeah, we do a lot of work with schools and a lot of work with professionals who are in that triage space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions today?
I was wondering if there was any programming with OUTMaine for like teachers working with parents or caregivers, or if that's kind of out of the...
Well, I guess it would depend on what it is that you're looking for or thinking about. Maybe we can talk a little bit offline about this. Would that work for you? Because I'd love to hear more.
Yeah. I was just wondering if there was.
I mean, we've done work. I mean, we do some work with people. We've got some parent support groups going on, and we're talking about pulling together some office hours for providers. So that's why I'm really interested to know what it is specifically that you're kind of thinking about or looking for, because that we may have something that we're in the works, that we have in the works, or that we should have in the works.
I don't know. Like, I was just thinking with this specific conversation about how sometimes it's even like the parents are supportive, but then they're afraid their child, like they want to protect them from the world. And so
Yeah.
Like just giving resources and like empowering.
Yeah, we have a full day training that's designed for providers that work with parents and families, as well as the youth more on a one-on-one. And we spend a lot of time in that training talking about these kinds of resources. Mm-hmm. So we've, it's usually a regional training that we're doing. We haven't been doing any in-person ones since March because, COVID happened, but we're trying to get those back up online shortly. So keep a look on our website for that. And I think that would be helpful.
Great. Chris, well, I guess we should probably stop now because it's 12:15, but thank you, Sue and Grace, so much. Just great resources, wonderful tools.
Perfect. And Caitlin, email us, it's Sue at OUTMaine. Email me your address and we'll get you a swag bag. Excellent. Thanks much, everybody. I'll get those resources.
For folks who are coming back this afternoon, our keynote starts at 12:45, and that's in Zoom link A. And you can check your agenda and get back to Zoom link A at 12:45. And have a nice lunch and stretch, and we'll see you in a little bit.